I'd like to thank our sponsors, Blood Moon Box, a monthly subscription box service for period pads and tampons to help support all humans who have a cycle for that time of the month, and no need to run to a store to mix and match period supplies that don't cater to the entire ebbs and flows of your cycle. There are 2-box options based on your cycle, light and medium, and then heavy. And in addition to the period products, you'll also receive PMS herbal teas, a candle, and some other items for your time of the month. You can reserve a box by navigating to bloodmoonbox.com. And bloodmoonbox.com is on a mission to destigmatize the idea of period blood. At Blood Moon Box, they believe that it is the time to honor the enchanting magic within every person who has a cycle. So join us in embracing the magic of your cycle with Blood Moon Box. Hi, my name is Yasmin Tarehi, and this is Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Today's episode is with Samantha Sam Garcia, the author of the best-selling book, Regenerative Business, How to Align Your Business with Nature for More Abundance, Fulfillment, and Impact, and is the founder of Dirty Alchemy, the marketing agency and consulting firm for conscious entrepreneurs, coaches, and course creators. Sam hosts the Regenerative Business podcast and helps ambitious online business owners to build thriving business ecosystems that contributes to a better world vision. And I'm just so excited to invite her to the show. I picked up her book about a couple months ago, and I think I read it in about 2 days. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Sam.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted to be here.
So, Sam, to kick it off, can you start explaining, what is exactly a regenerative business in your own words, and why is it so important in today's world?
Yes, thank you for that. So, I wrote the book Regenerative Business because I've been in the online marketing world and for over a decade and have always been self-employed. I grew up in a household of self-employed people, freelancers. So it was kind of a default to just go straight into it after college, and jumped right into the consciousness space after spending a lot of time with regenerative agriculture. And about a decade ago, I moved to Maui on a whim. A friend invited me to stay in her extra bedroom, and I was like, okay, done. I'll break up with my boyfriend and cut any ties to Michigan, where I grew up, and came here 10 days later. And I met my husband, shortly after that, and he's a regenerative farmer. And so for the last 10 years, I've been living on regenerative farms and very close with nature here in Hawaii. And something that became so obvious is just when you actually live very close to nature. And I'm sure all of you listening know this already, but just to give it some words, when you live really closely to nature, you see how there's this big difference between how humans design things and how nature designs things. And when I started looking back on where that came from, a lot of it came from the Industrial Revolution, which was a few hundred years ago. And there's a few different waves of the Industrial Revolution. And it gave these huge advances in technology and has made it so we have a global world, which is incredible and also pretty devastating for us humans with our human bodies, which are a part of nature, not machines. So with business, most businesses are built around the idea of a factory. Even if you have an online business, even if you have a product-based business, even if you never touch a factory at all, the mentality around it comes from this industrial mindset and this factory mindset with inputs and outputs, and the bottom line of profiting money being the king. So this is very different than nature. And this has been this huge devastation for the planet, for humans, for other species, for ourselves. And so the whole idea behind regenerative business is, instead of how do humans design businesses, how would nature design businesses? And so a really great metaphor for this would be if anyone here gardens at all, and you think about your garden in the hot heat of summer, and what would happen if you left your garden for a week or a month? It would die unless you're paying someone else to come in and water it for you. But if we think, and that is a human designed growing system, or even a farm, a big farm with corn or whatever, if you leave it, it's without the mechanisms in place, it's going to die. Now, if we compare that to nature's designed food growing systems, which are forests, if you leave it for a week or a month, nothing happens. Well, I mean, a lot of things happen. But it's all connected to it continuing to thrive and keep producing and keep being alive. So with regenerative business and this regenerative mindset, which does not just apply to business, of course, we start asking, how would nature design this?
So many follow-up questions after that. Okay, so this is, it's a novel, but like kind of a first principle way of looking at the world, starting with nature in mind, with this regenerative perspective in mind. I mean, even when we're looking at the way farms have been built, like we moved into this industrialized farming, and now we're sort of seeing the calamity, of what's been playing out as a result of that. And I think it's true, similarly what you say for businesses, that if we don't bring in our own, not just like, looking at the lens of the world, but also our inner world into these conversations with business, then eventually there will be calamity, whether it's illness or, physical or even just emotional within the system. So I love that you're starting out with this like first principle of thinking about nature when you start creating your business, and thinking about this regenerative system when you're building a company. And I think that feels, when I read it in your book, I was like, wow, it's so brilliant that you've made that connection. And I want to really dive deep into what that means, because, I have a lot of people listening in who run businesses or entrepreneurs, or even run households, right? And I want to really dive into, what does it mean to create a regenerative business from scratch? And so how would you maybe coach or work with someone who is starting to build their own business off the ground? Like, what are the things that they should be considering? What are some of the things they should be thinking about?
Great question. A lot of people who come to me, they already have a business in place. So it would be fun to start at level 0 for jumping in. And my specialization is definitely around thought leadership and people who want to sell digital products. So certain courses, books like that, but also product-based ones. And the thing that I like to think about with starting off a business or a new offer in your business, if you already have one, is if you can look forward 10 years, what would you love to be known for? And that can be really vulnerable and precious to ask, because if you can see yourself on a stage and ask like, oh my God, usually that will trigger, with someone who hasn't had a business before, that will trigger this, who am I to do that sort of mentality. But if you really can sit down, get quiet, and think about, what would I love to be known for 10 years from now? What sort of impact would I love to see 10 years from now? It's astounding how quickly that 10-year vision can come into place, especially if your whole heart is behind it. A lot of people will start their business with this idea that they think will work versus what they actually want. And no matter what business, at least in the beginning, before you start automating and having a team, it takes work. It absolutely takes work. Like, you're setting up a garden. At the beginning of setting up a garden, you have to prepare the soil and plant the seeds and water and all of these things at the beginning. That has to happen. So this, you can almost think of it as, what is this acorn that I want to plant? What is this seed that I want to plant in the ground in the first place? That's really where you want to start with.
So it's so powerful, having that inquiry, that question. As you pose that question, I was like, wow, that's something. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about 10 years out. It's more like a year or 2 years, but 10 years is it's a big one, right? It's the decade long kind of contribution is. There's just kind of infinite possibilities in that space. So can you walk us through your own kind of personal journey and what inspired you to get involved in this space? When I read your book, I loved, your journey from what you studied in school and how you sort of evolved into this space of speaking about regenerative business practices. So I'd love to hear a little bit more about what inspired you.
Yeah, I just want to touch back on one point before we go there. Just from what you said, something popped up in my brain, which was a lot of us don't realize what a long-term relationship our business is with us, because we can't. It's often for entrepreneurs, we think 1 or 2 years out, or even 1 month out. We're just thinking forward. But if you're in your 30s, if you're in your 40s, if you're in your 50s, you have decades more with your business, assuming this is the business that is your passion, is your sole passion. Some people's businesses aren't. It's just something that they're excited to create, and then they want to actually move on to something else, which is fine. But for a lot of people I work with, their business is just this flaming passion within them, and they could never imagine retiring. They're like, oh my gosh, no, I want to keep doing this forever. And if you're in your 30s, that could mean 60 more years. I mean, or at least 30 more years, right? Or if you're in your 50s, another 10, 20 more years with this entity that is separate than you. It gives a lot of relief in that time scale. So it's like, no, I don't have to get this done this year. Like, it would be cool if I did, but I actually have decades to really ground into this and really establish myself and really expand and have the impact that I want to have through this business.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I love it. And I think also it seems like we're going to be living a lot longer in our generation. So like even just having this, even if you are a little bit older, right, you might have another 20, 30, 40 years out, right, to do what you love. So I love that. It's never too late. So Sam, like, why is working in cycles and seasonality a method that is so valuable for the businesses that you consult with, and then also within like the business that you have with yourself? Why is seasonality and working in cycles so powerful?
Yeah. So going back to our factory, we have been trained from childhood to work 40 hours a week and follow a very consistent cycle of time. So in grade school, if you remember the bells between classes and after recess, that was directly taken from factories, so that it was training you to follow authority and follow time scales that would prepare you to work in a factory. Why this has not changed most of us don't work in factories, so why this hasn't changed is I don't even know. I don't even know. But what's interesting is when I start working with clients, one of the first things that happens is they usually have a set point of how much they're working. And even if you're not a business owner, you'll notice this of how long certain things take you is pretty much held in your body. So if someone comes from a corporate background and they're used to working 40 to 60 hours a week, that will immediately overlay into their entrepreneurial life. Even if they could get everything done in 10 hours a week, even if they didn't have to work every single week, they still overlay that because it's stuck in their body. Me, I never worked a corporate job, but I still brought this 9 to 5 somatic feeling into my business. So one of the biggest challenges I recommend people, and please, if you're listening and you're a business owner or you see how it can apply to your non-business life, your corporate life or whatever, just start noticing how you're allowing time to expand for different tasks, and try and see what would you actually have to do in your business if you could only work 20 hours a week. I'm not saying that everyone should work 20 hours a week at all, but it's this really not difficult, but challenge. This is a challenging thing for you to give your own body and your own self for what do I actually have to do in my business? What is this maintenance mode? If you get sick, if you have an opportunity to travel the world, if you get pregnant, you're going to have to scale back in your business. So knowing ahead of time what actually matters in your business is really amazing. So coming back to cycles and seasonality, we've pretty much we've started our business and ran our business with this very factory oriented and masculine mindset, because men have a daily hormone cycle with their cortisol levels. So they can work every single day again and again and again and again and again year round. Where women, we have a lunar hormonal cycle. So from one week to the next, your hormone levels are going to be different. What you're inclined to do, what you're good at, is going to be different because of the different levels of different hormones in your body throughout the month. And even as creatives, a lot of us shame ourselves if we notice that we're night owls, or we do our best work right in the morning, but I have to take care of my kids at that moment, or I have to do X, Y, and Z in this moment. But as you start recognizing in your own self, in your own bodies, what your different cycles are so that you can enter your business as your best self, everything can change. You're able to get so much more done in a fraction of the time because you're doing it at the time that you're aligned to do it at. And that also applies throughout the year. So this is where seasonality comes in, where for some people, like, summer is the time where you go on vacation and the kids are home from school. For other people, that's when you want to be out on the town networking and growing your business. Or winter, on the other side of things, winter for some people is like, I'm stuck inside, I'm going to grow my business. But for other people, it's, this is a time for rest. This is a time for holidays. This is a time for being with friends and family and celebrating. So recognizing that we have been trained and ingrained to have this masculine daily cycle. Every day is the same, 40 hours a week in my body. It's not serving you. So how do we
Right.
actually come into our own cycles on a daily, monthly, and annual basis?
Right. That's so powerful. I noticed that, when I was shifting to that lunar seasonality method, that it's hard to break free from the matrix. It's like
Yeah.
you kind of have to deal with guilt, the guilt that you feel comparing yourselves to like what everyone else is doing, and the societal pressure of folks maybe saying like, well, how come you don't work this many hours? And it's like, it's interesting is that who cares how many hours you work? It's really just about your creative, whether you're connecting with your heart, with your creativity, and and also being efficient and productive. But all those things to me are a little bit disconnected from time, and
Yeah.
so I love that you have this methodology. So how do you coach people to make that shift, if they're just stuck in this like testosterone, patriarchal kind of way of working Monday through Friday? Do you ask them to like wean off, do kind of like a little bit of a weaning off once a week, or changing their schedule, or working when they feel inspired? Like what sort of magic do you tell people to move towards?
I love to start with encouraging them just to recognize and know for themselves. So a few different ways, depending on the person, but here's a list of things that you guys could do. One is, I love tracking time that I work in business. And from working with clients, this is a total game changer. It's a little annoying, I'm not going to lie, but it can be a game changer for you just to recognize what your patterns are. So there's a bunch of different options, but there's this free online tool called Toggl, Toggl. And if you start for, let's just say for 2 weeks, track every time you're working on something, and you'll see in Toggl, you can click start, stop, or after the fact at the end of the day, you can actually put in what you worked on. And just do that for 2 weeks of how long did certain things take? How, were you surprised? What were your standard hours like? How much did you actually work? And I've been using Toggl for over 10 years now because I started as a freelancer. So I just got in the habit of tracking my time to charge clients. And now it's something that's just a useful tool in my business. But it became so obvious of like, wow, I forget what year this was, but wow, I work every single week for 36 hours. without even any sort of consciousness around it. It's like I've every single week, 36 hours. That is what my body somatically knows. And I wouldn't have known that if I wasn't tracking. So I would start with tracking your time if you can for a week, 2 weeks, an entire month, and see what your set point is. And from there, I challenge you to cut it. You don't have to cut it in half, but actually think about, okay, if my set point is 36 hours, what would happen if I only allowed myself to work 25 hours this week? And how do I figure out? Like, you have to figure out, these are the projects that I have to do. How can I fit them into 25 hours a week? And it is mind blowing how much time we're frivolous with time sometimes. And especially if we love our businesses or we're using our business as this distraction from other parts of our life that are not going so well. And that's one thing. And then the other is if you're a woman or a human with a uterus who's also menstruating, just start tracking your cycle. There are great free apps. I use Natural Cycles because I have an Aura ring, and it's a way that you can do non-hormonal fertility tracking. But there's also Clue and a whole bunch of other ones where you can track your cycle, and you'll start to notice, okay, there's 4 phases of a menstrual cycle, and you just I would recommend on a daily basis, write, what phase of my menstrual cycle am I on? What phase of the moon are we currently in? What season am I in? So like winter, like physical season of my environment. And then if you're into astrology, I also love putting down what phase of what zodiac sign is the moon in, because it goes through every 2 days, it switches signs. And if you're a lunar creature and you start tuning into it, you'll be shocked of like, oh my God, when the moon is in Scorpio, I feel terrible every single time this month. And a lot of women, when they start tracking their cycle, they'll notice the first few days before their period, they hate everything, and they start ripping apart their businesses or fighting with their partners and all these things. So when you just start getting aware of it and you start noticing these things, and then on the daily level, I really like just being honest with yourself and start noticing when you actually have energy. And start either putting the tasks that you quote unquote have to do that are the highest priority for you during that. And that can be on a daily basis, or like, I know I want to finish my book. Why am I not finishing my book? Okay, I actually have to prioritize it and put it at those ideal hours. So there's a few different ways to go about it.
I love that. And now I'm also curious, when you wrote your book, like, what was that process like for you in terms of completing it, getting it done? And did you work with seasonality? Did you do more of a prioritization? What was it like for you?
Are you into human design at all?
Very much, yes. I did it for 5 years.
Okay, so I'm a manifester, so my cycles are a little funky. So I'm definitely someone where I when I have that creative urge, I go all into it, which can from the outside look really unhealthy, where I am just obsessed with this thing for an entire week straight, not sleeping and not talking to anyone, but it works with my design. So I'll start with that lens. But for my book, it started with, I'm going to write 15 minutes a day and committing to that. I didn't always do it, but that commitment, and so much of writing in business is like, I'm just going to write for 15 minutes. It suddenly takes away a lot of the fear of this is going to take forever. So I love that with big projects. So I started writing 15 minutes a day, which always ended up turning into like 30 minutes to an hour, just because I enjoyed it. And then as the months went on, I would go multiple months without writing a single word, and then get back into it and had this realization of it's just as easy to write as it is not to write. And I think this is the case for a lot of things in our lives. There's little things that you can do on a daily basis. I mean, writing 15 minutes a day, that's nothing. Or meditating 15 minutes a day, that's nothing. But it's just as easy to do it as not to do it. So you have to start activating yourself around it. But how I actually got myself to finish, I realized I was a quick writer in the process. How I got myself to actually finish after I was like 7 months in, and I do these morning walks with my dogs, and journaling is something that I think is so powerful, but for the life of me, I can't get myself to journal. I just actually hate doing it, even though it's so good for me. So what I do instead is I take my 2 little dogs for a walk every morning. It ends up being a 45-minute walk, and I talk to myself. I'm lucky that I live in a rural area or an undeveloped area, so no one's around, and me talking to myself is not a big deal. So instead of journaling, I talk to myself. And in one of these mornings, I had this realization, and I forget what else was going on in life, but I had this realization of the Sam that I want to be is an author. And it just, for whatever reason, this fleeting, seemingly unimportant thought just had this lightning effect in me. And within a few weeks, I was finished with the book. And a few weeks after that, the book was published. Because the Sam I wanted to be was an author. So why am I not prioritizing it? It was this anchor thought that I could come back to and be like, the Sam I want to be is an author. So I have to get this out. I have to get this published.
That's awesome. So I love that you shifted your identity and then the world met you kind of halfway. I love it. So cool. Okay. So, and that makes sense because of the human design type that you're in. And for folks who are listening who don't know human design, we'll do an entire episode just on that. So, Sam, you went from this solopreneurship to becoming an entrepreneur. You talk a lot about kind of the need to bring community into this process of growing your business. Can you tell us a little bit more about what this means to you?
Yes. Let me preface by saying, if you are a solopreneur and you love being a solopreneur, that is beautiful. You do not have to scale your business. I actually don't think enough business owners just have a business as a lifestyle business, which can be a beautiful thing where you make enough to have a beautiful lifestyle and you don't have to work that much. You're not that stressed. So I'll preface it with that. But growing up in Michigan during the globalization of the auto industry, so there was just this huge recession. Both my parents, one of my parents was laid off, the other one, who was self-employed, just didn't have any clients at all. And it was this big imprint on me around jobs and work. And a huge thing that motivates me in my business to continue growing is to give people amazing jobs. Because a lot of people have jobs they hate. Like, scroll on Instagram and there are so many accounts of just memes making fun of 9-to-5 jobs, of how terrible they are. So it is this huge motivator for me. And this is a personal thing, of course, but I can give people amazing jobs. I'm an introvert. I get to work from home. I can give other introverts who like to work from home work. They don't have to be entrepreneurs. Not everyone has to be entrepreneurs, but so that's a big motivator for me in my business. And the transition from solopreneur to business owner, I think, should be for everyone. Like, even if you are a solopreneur, you coming forward and making a claim that you are a business owner is really a game changer, because you start actually realizing that even though it's just you in there, you are running an entire business. And something that I love doing is when you realize that you are not your business, you get to then meet the soul of your business. So one thing that I recommend everyone doing is, if you can go into a trance state or take it yourself into a deep meditation. We also have there's a free meditation on my website if you want to have me guide you through the process of meeting the soul of your business, because it is this separate entity than you. And not only are you then able to price things accordingly and honor the business as itself, but you realize that the business has a wisdom of its own. You're not alone in this. I have some friends who think that there are these wise entities that are channeling through us, through our businesses. I don't necessarily know if I believe it, but I love the idea of it. And when you can actually connect with the spirit of your business, the soul of your business, it might have a vision of your business that's separate than you, but it's coming through you. So you get to be the steward of it. You get to be the activator and instigator for it. You get to initiate it. But if your business has a larger vision than what you initially thought, realize that you could actually ally with it and have be supported throughout that entire process, whether that means hiring people, whether that means you need different mentorship through it.
So, okay. I'm loving this so much because I'm like taking notes for my own.
Oh, I'm realizing I didn't answer your question, but that's where that went.
No, it's perfect. It always needs to go where it needs to go. It's and I think it is. Honoring people wherever they are at in their journey is also part of this process, right? Not everyone wants to be a business owner. Not everyone wants to take that kind of leap of faith into managing all these layers of reality, but it is so powerful to know that you can do that. That's always available, right, for people that want to move to that transition. And you also talk a little bit about biodiversity as a way to create resiliency. Can you share more about that?
Yeah. So going back to our farm metaphor, with the industrialization of farming, where it used to be this smaller family farm where they would make enough for their community, for themselves, and sell the extra, which then eventually became these massive monocultures of corn, because it can be more efficient, because you can get specialized machines. You don't have to have all of these windbreaks in there. You can just buy one type of seed, so you can buy it in bulk. So this is very much underlined by the bottom line, the financial profit that someone can make from it. What happens in what monocultures are, it just means one species. So in the Midwest, all of the soybean fields or the corn fields that you see of one species for acres and acres and acres and acres and acres helps for profit, but it kills resilience. Because what you're essentially doing is you're making a salad bar for one type of bug. And then you have to buy more chemicals. Then the bugs become okay with the chemicals. So then there's super bugs. And all of a sudden, this piece of land, this thing that's supposed to be this powerful piece of nature, because it is connected to nature, it becomes something that is 100% chemical and human dependent. There's no resilience there. It will die if you don't take care of it. So one of the reasons I love biodiversity is it naturally creates resilience. So where one crop, if you have a bunch of one crop, it becomes a salad bar. Instead, you have different plants that have caterpillars growing and ladybugs, which will kill those other bugs. And within your business, this can be done because when we actually bring in biodiversity and collaboration into our business, then suddenly it's not all on you. It's not all on one product you have. It's not all on one launch or one way of doing things. So by layering in different people in your business, if you get sick, there's someone behind you taking care of it. There's not one way to interact with potential clients. So if an algorithm changes, it doesn't matter. There's other channels for abundance to come in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's such a powerful metaphor, and I love that bringing different, points of view, different perspectives, that diversity of opinion, and also just the collaboration, right? That it forces you to sort of sit in that space of tension, as well, right? Because it's not just you kind of making decisions. It's there's this pushing up against, which forces, I think, people to think differently and to kind of connect with a deeper part of themselves. So
yeah,
I
and
love that.
there is this there's this tendency for business owners, if once things start getting busy because success is coming in, so many people will tend to hire people just like them, because you have this natural rapport and, oh, you're just like me and you can just take all of these things off my plate. When this biodiversity factor comes in, when you can actually realize, no, I need to hire people that do the things that I hate doing, do the things I'm bad at doing, do the things that are not in this zone of genius area for myself. So that's really where we can, and of course that brings in that diversity of opinion, but also experience and perspective that really makes your business ecosystem strong.
Mm. Yeah, I love that so much. And I think it's also true even just across the board in all businesses, not just like smaller businesses, right? Like it's true for all even the bigger, public companies. Like the more diversity we have, the stronger the teams and the stronger the differences in, opinions that can actually probably force people to get more creative. So I really appreciate that.
What comes to mind when you say that is there's this one book that I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 31. So, which is apparently super, I didn't figure out until after the fact that it's really common for women to not be diagnosed with autism and ADHD until they're in much later in life because we mask so well because we're taught to be good little girls. But in my rabbit hole of research after the diagnosis, I read this one book. I think it's called Divergent Minds. I'll have to fact check that. And she writes about it's very much with neurodivergence, but also she starts the entire book of how the entire mental health plane is made for men. So all of these diagnoses, even I'm sure plenty of you have heard of how many women are killed in car accidents because of the seatbelt are made for men. And there's all of these little things throughout life where men are the standard. And so women are just left to the wayside and we're not even thought of in the process. So and as we create more diversity in businesses, we also want to be thinking about, and as AI continues to grow, we want to think about what are all of these diversities that we don't want to miss through the standardization and the scaling of process. So I think it's even more important. I mean, it is significantly more important for these larger businesses.
Yeah. I'm so happy we're talking about these topics. It's just inspiring me to think a little bit more differently as well, and the remembering of consciously, bringing these different ideas into my own life, right? Because sometimes you can just get a little bit, what's the word? Sometimes one can forget, to incorporate different ideas and opinions, especially when things are going well, right? It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. And also, I would say, as someone who is a minority, who also runs a business, I sometimes think, oh, I've already got a lot of diversity of opinion in here. So it's interesting just to come from that lens. So Sam, can you tell us a little bit more about, a person, event, or a catalyst that placed you on this path? I'd love to hear more about your own journey and what brought you to the space of Dirty Alchemy and also writing Regenerative Business.
Yeah. So I got into marketing right out of college, which may not have made any sense since I got a bachelor's in physics and then immediately did freelance marketing. But I started my business and grew my business by applying and pitching people that I was just obsessed with because I knew that I could help them and knew that I would figure it out along the way. So I started being paid like nothing per hour because I grew up in Michigan where the economy is nothing compared to other larger places with actual cities in it, and just figured it out along the way and became obsessed with the online space of we can actually find our perfect people through online. And this was 10 years ago. It's so different now where like that's the standard, especially in the post-COVID world. But I was just in love with, wow, you can find other people who are obsessed with raw veganism. I'm not a raw vegan, but or astrology or all of these things that I'm a weirdo where I am from, but there are these big groups of people online that are also obsessed with these weird things. And eventually I ended up years later in the online launch space for an astrology company and really learning that the ins and outs of online marketing for digital products, and made a business out of it. And especially because I was a woman, I was into all of these weird things. I was hiring other women who were also into these really weird things. And that was literally the gift from heaven for clients, because most marketers are bro marketers and they're into maximum efficiency and they're into following one formula and using urgency and scarcity and all of these really shitty things, versus being a really intuitive, sensitive human who is pushed away and appalled and disgusted by those sorts of tactics. And it just, growing the business was fairly easy because it was kind of this blue ocean effect of no one else was doing it. And eventually I was feeling this emptiness and this feeling of something was wrong in my business, even though everything was going fine, but it wasn't directly connected to environmentalism, which is just such a core value of mine. And I have been living on these regenerative farms with my husband's full-time job being regenerative farming. And I was kind of resigned to, well, my business is just going to be successful. And with the profit and with all the money that we're making, I'm going to fund philanthropic things. I'm going to be funding environmental change, and which is beautiful. Like, I think people can totally do it. But as someone who wants everything to be woven together and integrated, it eventually just came through. It was actually through the process of writing my book that it all started making sense. I'm anyone who feels called to write a book, please write a book. It'll change your life. And it really, really, really help you ground into what you know, but haven't given words to. So it was really through the process of writing my book that I could see, like, oh, I was using nature's principles in this way with this client. Oh, I was using this aspect of nature, and oh, this piece of success was because I was leaning on nature in this way. And to actually give words to it really changed everything for me.
Yeah, it's interesting. I love this concept of, like, not using nature, but like relying on nature to be the guiding force for building your business and building, your life. Really, I love that piece, and I just thought it was genius. How you wove all those pieces together in your book, and the way that you put together the framework for understanding the blueprint, really, for how to build your business, or even go back to the drawing board and reinstill these I would say patterns of natural law within your business. And especially the part, you could tell, like, I really read your book. Like,
no, you sent me questions ahead of time. I was like, oh, she actually read it.
Yeah, I did. I read it very fast. Yeah. And there's this part also where you also say to invoke the moon, right? To, like, connect with the waxing and waning of the moon, and using that as kind of a force, a guiding light of inspiration, as just one example, right? To kind of call on nature. Now, I also just got back from a month in Egypt, and learned a lot about these ancient technologies that really used natural law. They worked with nature to be able to build and create. And it's so interesting, like, how much more advanced one can be in terms of working with nature, because there's this whole other layer which we haven't really spoken about, which feels maybe more mystical and esoteric, but like having these big concepts of consciousness and ideas come through that normally wouldn't come through a system that doesn't include nature, in its framework. So yeah. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on that, or not. We can move on.
So just to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that when we're using nature, these bigger ideas can come through?
Yeah, like what I really felt moved by in your book and in the way that you wove these pieces of nature together was that when we work with nature, it's not that only that we're able to create a regenerative business, but it's also that we can that there's like an ease and flow, and that there's like actually more that can come through into your
Totally.
field, right? Like that, because it's easier and it's also more creative than working with like linear frameworks. People will
Mhm.
often say that to me, right? They're like, "How do you get so much done?" Or how do you, and it's like actually if you relax and open up, that there's so much more that our perceptions oftentimes like can't see if we're just so fixated on one thing. So that's for me. I thought that was a really powerful point in your book.
Yeah. It's especially for people who have a spiritual bent or they're really into mystical stuff and the cosmos and that sort of stuff. It is a part of nature and we're not separating that out. But if you can pair that with the actual grounding elements of earth and earth-based nature, man, things can grow really quickly. There you go. Where if you start planting seeds and I'll actually take care of them so that they are growing. It might take months or years, but it gets to a point, there's this tipping point where suddenly it's big enough that it doesn't need you. Of course, you want to be a part of it. And of course, you want to be channeling through it. But where before you not only had to do the mystical, the intuitive, and the earth based action, it gets to a point where you can do the mystical, intuitive, and have your business do the earth-based action. And things can happen so quickly at that point and grow so much more.
Yes, yes. That I want to underscore that point, highlight it, put some exclamations around it. So powerful. So, now that we're coming to time, Sam, I want to know, like, what sort of things have surprised you the most on this journey looking back?
I think one of the things that two things come to mind. One of them being how important it is for us to take action on what comes through us in the sense that we can be stuck in indecision and in our heads around what to do when really the most magic and support will come from the universe, from the earth, if we do something and run forward with it wholeheartedly. And we can waste a lot of time in this indecision. I I wanted to share that just because it was something that was this huge aha with me earlier on in my business. And if anyone else is earlier on in your business, there's this sense of, or this torture that you put yourself through by not deciding and going forward. It's this will I, won't I? It's like being in it's like being in a relationship with another person and you're like, oh, do I actually want to be with them? Are they actually that cool? Like, I could do better. And instead of giving your whole heart to the relationship and either figuring out whether you need to end it or it really blossoming through your attention, you're just torturing yourself and you're having a shitty relationship. It's kind of what a lot of people do with their business. The other thing that surprised me through my journey is how much earth-based time actually factors in. I'm a really spiritual person. I do all the manifestation ritual stuff. And actually looking back over my journey of how there's so many parts of it that were fast, but so many elements where it just took time. It's like almost like this astrological cycle of time needed to come back around for something to pop, and then all of a sudden it popped. So that's what surprised me and what popped in my head around surprise.
And I mean, what comes up for me too is this concept of patience, of just surrender and patience. And how, I want to understand, like, how do you cultivate that skill set? I'm sure that a lot of folks probably are curious about that.
I think there are plenty, like, you can meditate, you can whatever, but something that's really helped me is having a beautiful life outside of business. A lot of people I know, their only creative stuff is through their business. And so they work all the time and they get obsessed with their business versus having hobbies, learning to dance or paint, or having a beautiful group of friends in real life, not just online. It gives you so much patience, because then your creativity, your excitement, your whatever isn't just through your business.
I love that. Beautiful. And then, what about in terms of your call to action, for folks who are listening in, what do you want to tell our listeners about their well-being, their wellness, in terms of like maybe even what you want to tell them about their own business? What's your main takeaway?
Are you asking about the health and wellness of their business or the whole health and wellness of themselves?
It could be either or. Whatever you feel called to share is like a main takeaway that speaks to you.
Just underlining what you already know, in that your health and wellness is more important than money. It is more important than business goals. So you having a daily and weekly practice around nourishing yourself and taking care of your physical body is the most important thing you can do, especially if people are here in their 20s or 30s, where there's this sense of, I am unbreakable, I will live forever still. Just realizing that not only is it more important, but it also will help your business. You having a really healthy, vital vessel is going to help you in the long term, in that long-term relationship with your business.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And Samantha, this has been so great. Where can people find you if they want to read your book, or if they want to get in contact with your marketing agency? Or I'm not sure anything else that you have in terms of offerings, but where can people find you?
Yes, thank you. My website is thedirtyalchemy.com. I'm very, very active on Instagram. It's where I put up all of the new things. So you can follow us at The Dirty Alchemy on Instagram. If you want the first two chapters of my book for free, you can get that at thedirtyalchemy.com/free-book. And that'll take you to downloading the first two chapters for free. I have a podcast. We have courses. We have all sorts of things, which you can find on the website.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Samantha. And for those listening, you definitely have to check out her book and her work. It is absolutely, I think, critical at this juncture in humanity. So thanks so much for your time. I keep calling you Samantha, but I mean to say Sam.
Of course, yeah. For the context there for people listening is I published my book under Samantha Garcia, because everyone who emails me and then talks to me on the phone, they're like, "Oh, you're a woman. Oh, interesting," because they see Sam Garcia and they think I'm a man. So I had to put that there. But yeah, thank you so much, Yasmin. This has been a true pleasure, and I'm glad we were able to find a time for this.
Likewise, Sam. And for our audience, thanks for joining and for listening. In this episode, we learned about regenerative business with Samantha Garcia. And you could tune into Gateways to Awakening, where we host one-on-one conversations with leading experts in wellness, well-being, and spirituality. Thanks again. What would you like to see change in your life? And what is the biggest obstacle that you're facing now? I run a 5-week program at the Inner Knowing School for serious individuals who are ready to take the next step in their personal and professional lives. I will personally be coaching a small group of individuals, a number of practical tools and frameworks for creating an intuition practice and for self-mastery. You can find more at theinnerknowingschool.com. I have a master's certification in intuition medicine, and I've condensed 10 plus years of experience and research navigating how to harness your energy and intuition in an easy to access live curated course. Now, as someone who's helped countless creatives, entrepreneurs, and many who are just plain stuck, open doors of possibility they never thought existed, I've seen this strategy transform people's inner states and external reality. And the best part is that you'll skyrocket your output and unlock your creative genius. I'll work with you weekly live to overcome your limiting beliefs and show you how to manage your energy instead of your time. I'll teach you how to create clarity, processes, develop your intuition based on some of the top tools and frameworks that I've developed, and you'll get access to guided meditations and visualizations not available anywhere else. This method is so effective that even if you don't have that much time, or if you think that you might not be ready, this will work for you. You can check out the link in the show notes to join the waiting list, and you can check out what past clients had to say about the program. Wishing you all many blessings ahead.